Okay, in this video we're going to show you the basics or the essentials for Photoshop. Having used this program for a long time, there's about 6 or 7 different concepts, and I think if you get these down right away, you're going to be in really good shape getting to know that program. So I'm going to switch into Photoshop right now, and I'll show you some windows and some tools that you need to get comfortable with. So in Photoshop, the main thing I like to usually start off with is explaining the idea of what layers are. Layers are the ability to kind of stack things on top of each other. I'm going to go ahead and first, before I start talking about layers, I'm going to tell you about a couple windows that you need to have open when you're running Photoshop. Pretty essential to being able to use this program effectively. Under Window, you're going to find a couple things that I've already got checked off. One called Layers, and I'm going to add a couple other ones that you can see here in the background in a second. But layers is the main thing we're going to talk about today. So if you don't see this little thing on the side here called a layers window, go up to Window for the menu command and drop down to layers, and then you'll get this little window that we can control and move around. I've also got a couple other windows stacked behind here that are nested. There's one called Styles, which we'll get to later, and another one called Swatches. And you can kind of tell I can pull these little windows apart and stack them on top of each other if you want to nest them together. And there's also other features if you right-click on Auto Collapse and Auto Hide. I don't really care for those features, so I turn those off. But you might experiment with those to see if you like those. But let's go ahead and go back to the Layers window. Move these ones out of the way for now. And let's see what's in this Layers window. Because you can see on this sample file that I have here, I've got some text, and I've got the girl surfing, and I've got a shape and some more text. And you can see all these different elements in my Layers window. So over here, I'm going to show you the basics of what happens with this Layers window. The ability to stack things on top of each other, and there's a little eyeball that lets you see the visibility for each layer or not. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn some of these on and off, and you can kind of see what's on that layer. So when I did that one, you'll notice this text down here disappeared. So I'll do that again for you. And then the same thing, I've got a little shape layer. I can turn that on or off. I can turn off the basic title up there, my surfer girl. And then there's a white background image. We'll talk about how to use that too. So that's really the basics of layers. Now the great thing about that is you can stack things on top of each other. So if I take my surfer girl here and I move this to the top of my little stack, that image overrides all of these other layers below that. Because there's pixels all the way across this entire area. So everything below that is going to be won't show up. It'll be invisible because it's blocked. Now there's another feature that we need to talk about real fast called the opacity slider inside of the layers window. And that's the idea of being able to make things semi-transparent. So even though I put this girl in the top layer, she's the topmost item on my stack, I can still take this opacity and I can make her semi-transparent. And you can kind of see the idea that you can have multiple layers on top of each other, but you typically, you're usually going to keep things at 100% visibility. You can come up with some cool looks by changing the opacity, but most often you're going to probably, want to see things 100% visible and, be able to kind of stack them, control what items are on top of what items, and it works out pretty good that way. Let's see, I got to go one more layer down to see my title again. Okay, let's. Now that we understand layers a little bit, let's go to probably the most important tool you have to use in our toolbox. And so I'm going to slide over here to the left a little bit and grab my toolbox. That's this thing here. And all kinds of different tools we can just click on, icons we can see to grab a hold of and to use. So for this lesson, we're really going to talk about maybe 3 of them, I think, 3 or 4. The first one is this Move tool, the very top one. That idea basically lets you move things. Probably the number one thing you're going to want to do. So if I have my Surfer Girl layer picked, that's the layer that's active by this little blue icon or blue color shading. I can just click and I can drag that layer around my desktop. Same thing with the other ones. I'm going to go ahead and undo that so I can move it back to where it was. But I can do that for the other layers as well. So my title, I can just use my Move tool to move that around. And it's pretty simple to get to know how that one's going to work out. The basic function of that. The Move tool does have a feature. A lot of your tools are going to have little options across the top of this area up here below your menu. And this one has a feature called Auto Select that you might want to try out. I don't use it too often, but sometimes it works great. Auto Select basically just lets you click on a layer that you can see and you grab it. Sometimes when you're first starting out, though, I'll ask you guys to not turn it on, so you guys have to switch to the layer that you want to activate. And that way it kind of makes you kind of know where you're at in this sequence. The auto select sometimes can be a little bit tricky to grab things, and you can grab the wrong thing, but it is a pretty cool feature if you want to check that out. Let's see. So the main thing besides moving stuff, there's a pretty powerful combination to add to that called the Free Transform tool. and it's actually an option you can get to under Edit and then Free Transform. Command T is the main way to do that. So I show you a shortcut. Command T is the way I'd probably like to describe that for you guys, because you're going to use that all the time. So figure out that shortcut key, the Command key, and the letter T, and that's going to let you see a little bounding box around whatever layer you have selected. So I had this text layer here, and I can move things with this Free Transform tool activated. I can also rescale or resize things, and then the other major thing is to rotate. So with that one tool, you can do 3 or 4 different things. It's a pretty amazing tool. I'm going to go ahead and hit Escape on my keyboard to undo those changes before I lock it in, and I'll try that same idea on another piece here. I'm going to try it with this red box that I have in the background. So I want to switch over to that layer. So I know I'm working on that layer. Command T, and then you get those same options. So the basic idea of the Free Transform tool is scaling up or down. A good trick you might want to try, and I'll try it maybe on the girls, the photo of the surfer girl, is resizing things. Things can sometimes get missized, so things can get squished or stretched out. I'll show you that one on the girl one. Let's go ahead and just basically we can show you those features again. But you can still move, rotate by moving your cursor off to the side. You get a little rotate option, and then if you like those changes, you have to kind of confirm those changes by hitting the return key on your keyboard. So that's kind of an odd step, but hit return on the keyboard, and that'll lock those changes into place. If you don't like what you did, you can always undo. So Edit Undo or Command Z for undoing something, and you can start over. If you're in the middle of doing something, I'm going to Command T it again and start the process. If you don't like what's happening, the other option is just hit Escape on the keyboard, and you kind of get out of that option. It'll go back to where it's not being edited. I was going to mention, I'm going to move over to the girl on the surfer girl on layer 2 here. That one, when I Command T that one, I can barely see those bounding boxes in the corners. But if I do resize her, you'll notice I can completely squish and reshape that photo. And for photorealistic images, that can be kind of a mess. So one thing you might want to do when you're resizing a photorealistic image is hold the Shift key on your keyboard. So find that Shift key and keep holding your mouse down, and you can keep your proportions together. So your width and your height kind of moves at the same time. So that's a pretty helpful idea as well. Let me go ahead and hit Return there, and lock those changes into place, and we can move on to the next concept. The next idea we should talk about is, let's talk about the Type tool. It's next on my list here. So the Type tool, you can see that's down in my toolbox, down there's where the big T. I've already got some type on my document, so you can do a couple things. If you already have type on your project, switch to the Type tool, and you can click in to edit some text that's already existing. So I can pretty much do the same kind of word processor features you would imagine. You've got options to change fonts up here in your options area, your alignment options, you've got color options. I've already applied a style to this one, so this one's not quite a normal one. When I create my next piece of new text, I'll show you what I mean by these options here. And a way to warp text too, so some pretty cool options, but usually you just highlight things just like you would expect to, and you can edit and modify it. Now if you want to create your own